Hello, hello. Welcome back to our continuing discussion of the workbook for students in A Course in Miracles, which we've been at on this video series for more than a year, which is really cool. Again, I really, truly appreciate your commitment to your own practice, to awakening. Really, I do. I appreciate this really above all else, above all of the comments that you've left, the subscriptions, the views, all of that is perfectly well and good, but it's the practice, your own dedication that really matters to all of us. So thank you for that. Today, we've arrived at lesson 338, which is, well, it's anathema to the ego. The ego doesn't like it and wants to tell you that it's not true, that it's a complete pack of lies, bullshit. Yeah, well, let's just acknowledge that that's what it's going to say and forgive it. Release, let go, rinse, repeat, because it's coming. The idea for today: I am affected only by my thoughts. I'm affected only by my thoughts. There are many ways of saying this. One of them is all of the suffering that I experience and have experienced for countless eons. And if you don't go in for the idea of past, future lifetimes, all the suffering that I've experienced in this lifetime, I've heaped upon myself. The ego absolutely, positively does not want you to believe that. It does not want you to practice that. So it may have you saying right now, this Reverend Tomas guy is full of shit. How could that be true? Other people harm me all the time. In fact, someone said something nasty to me just the other day. Yeah, the dude in the sports car flipped me off on the freeway just this morning. People do things to me. Well, it certainly appears that way. And as long as each of us continues to identify ourselves as an individual, then other people will appear to affront us. They will say things that we don't agree with. They will do things that we think are rude, unthoughtful, and just plain wrong. You've gathered by this point that with A Course in Miracles, we're about a presentation of what is ultimate truth. In truth, there is no one out there. This is what oneness means. Everyone that seems to be offending you and affronting you, it's all happening in your own mind. Now, if that is something that you don't feel you can get behind and stomach and swallow, no problem. I'm not asking you to do that. You'll hear it again from me and from other people many times before the end of time. You can count on that. What also you can count on is the fact that people will provide you in the world with multiple opportunities for forgiveness. They will provide you with multiple opportunities to change your mind. and do as Jesus suggests in the commentary for today's idea, it gives you multiple opportunities to exchange a hateful or a fearful thought for a loving one. Forgiveness leads us out of suffering. It itself, yes, is an illusion because there's no one to forgive. However, it's the only illusion, and this is something A Course in Miracles states repeatedly, because we need to hear it repeatedly. It's the only illusion that leads out of suffering. The others keep us within. Think about when someone posts something on social media. Let's use politics and social media as an example here. I often do because, well, I don't talk about my own political views on this or any show. I don't. It's a very, very good, shining, concrete example of what we're talking about. It's an example of the ego and the ego's thought system in rampant action, carried away, naturally, completely carried away, defining and defending personal territory. Yeah. And it appears that other people are offending us. So let's say after you finish watching this video to the end and subscribe and leave comments, that you turn on your social media feed. And the first thing you see is a politically charged rant that you don't agree with from one of your Facebook friends, which could be someone that you know really well, could be a family member for all we know, right? And you instantly start to feel affronted by their lack of sensitivity, let's say. Now, who's the one that's affronted by this? It's not the person that says it, right? They simply blurted it out and put it out there into cyberspace because they could. You're the one that's having the reaction. And if it causes you to leave a nasty comment in its wake, who's suffering mentally? You're the one that is affected by your own thoughts on this. This is why forgiveness is such a central component of this course, because it gives us the opportunity to exchange these thoughts of damnation and condemnation and hatred of this other person for a forgiving thought, for a loving thought. Now, incidentally, forgiving this person doesn't mean you have to agree with them. They may have views that you will always consider to be egregious and wrong, even. In other words, you disagree. And of course, in the modern world, we seem to have, not just in the United States, where I'm coming from, we're a glaring and highly visible and obvious example of a polarized society, hyper-polarized, where rather than simply disagreeing with each other, we demonize each other and defend our shifting territories to very shifting, like dogs. Now, wherever you're watching from, politics operates the same way everywhere, isn't it? With people making every effort to grasp this elusive thing called power, which is just as ephemeral as every other illusion. What is it? I mean, what is it, actually? If you follow the inquiry, it's nothing. It's shifting sand. Now you've got it, now you don't. Contrast that with the truth of who you really are. You've never lost that. Even if you've chosen to wander around in this sea of strife warfare, brutality, suffering. We're each of us affected only by our thoughts. Now, this carries with it real power, tremendous power to realize that we're the ones making all of this crap up for ourselves. We can exchange the crappy thought for a loving thought. We can choose in the present moment to forgive, and each moment presents us with just such an opportunity. Watch what happens when you pick up your social media feed. You get a political rant. I mean, I get those all the time because let's just use the example of my Facebook friends. I'm nearly at 5,000 on that, and that represents a lot of views, doesn't it? I mean, everybody has an opinion, and some people are quite vocal on social media about them. So if this doesn't happen to you, so I'm just using it as an example, you may be in a position where everything that you see agrees with your own viewpoint, but it's highly unlikely, isn't it? That's quite rare. So what do we do? Well, we check our own thoughts, because it's our thoughts that harm us. It's our thoughts that cause us to stew with unloving thoughts, with further unloving behavior, with cursing someone, even if we don't type out a nasty message in response to their post, we're thinking it, right, in our head. And this, incidentally, is where forgiveness plays in. You don't have to call the other person up and say, hey, I forgive you. You don't have to do that. You can continue to disagree with them as long as you forgive them. You're overlooking the illusion. What they're saying is illusory. It's in your mind. It's not really them saying it. This is a very, very powerful idea that is quite alien to the way we were conditioned and brought up, isn't it? And unless you happen to be raised by parents who actively practice non-dual spirituality, I certainly was not. So most of us were not, I'm guessing. And it's a powerful idea, yet it's one that in time takes a while to sink in. If this is the first time you've heard the idea that, in fact, everything that seems to be going on outside of us is going on in our own mind, that can be something that you'll resist. I'm not saying you should, but you probably will to some degree. Makes sense. That's why we repeat ourselves as spiritual teachers. That's why we continue to say the same things over and over and over and over. Because we need to hear it, and we need to hear something dozens and dozens of times, usually, before we adopt it and we think, okay, this really does make sense. Let's practice this. So I invite you to practice this. And again, we're talking about the practice of forgiveness. This is A Course in Miracles. It's a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Wait a minute, I didn't say that. Actually, I'm not saying any of this. It's very, very powerful. And by the way, when Jesus says in the very first part of A Course in Miracles that it's a required course, he's referring to the universal curriculum. He's referring to spiritual practice, spiritual awakening itself, of which there are many manifestations. Clearly, right? Look at the panoply of traditions that's available to people. So much is available, and we need those. I mean, there are 8.5 billion of us and counting. So A Course in Miracles isn't going to connect with some people the way it connects with me or the way it connects with you, for example. There are many doors, and let's be glad of that. But the universal curriculum is required. The question in the present moment becomes, how much are we willing to take of the universal curriculum in this moment? Forgiveness. Removing the barriers to our awareness of love's presence. Removing the barriers to our awareness and direct experience of who we really are. Now, who are you? You know. I know you know. We all know deep down. We could choose to deny it. We could choose to run and hide. It's our choice. But you know exactly who you are. Thank you, as always, for joining me here. And we'll just keep going and continuing. And the more we hear these ideas, the better, because the more they'll sink in and inspire us to practice.